Is being recorded. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Day 2 of the Big Cheese Weekender. We are now on our finale for day 2, which is very, very exciting. And we've had an amazing day, a very cheesy day. I hope you've all had a lovely day and ate at least one cheese that you haven't tried before. That was the mission. That was the aim. I have to say, I think I may have failed today, but I've tried a lot of cheese, so that's really good. We're very excited. We've got our finale tonight is Booze to Choose with the red, white, and blues. So our wonderful patrons, Clawson, who have been manufacturing Stilton and blue cheese for years and years and years. We've got Kim, who's going to tell us all about that. Have joining us with wine expert Anna as well. And we're going to do this pairing, and it's light-hearted, bit of fun, but I would love it if you would put into the chat where you're joining us from. And ask any questions in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll pick those up as we go along, or the guys might see them and pick them up. We also have joining us Priya Taylor, who is the brand manager for Clawson. Oh, hi, we've got Annalise is joining us from Belfast. Hello. I hope you enjoyed the cheese and whiskey pairing. It was amazing. So we're going to wines with Anna. Oh, and we've got Noemi from New York. Brilliant. So lots and lots of friends from around the world joining us tonight. So without further ado, because you're all sick of me, you've seen me throughout the day and this evening, we're going to go to the speaker view, and I am going to introduce you to, I need to unpin myself actually. So I'm going to introduce you to Kim, who is going to tell us a little bit about Clawson, because phenomenal cheesemakers that have been around for years and years. So welcome, Kim. Do tell us a bit about Clawson.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. And it was just great to see in the chat we've got people from New Zealand as well as the USA and people closer to home in the UK. So some of the people joining us tonight in the UK may know a little bit about Clawson. But for everybody else that's joined us, Clawson's a farmers cooperative. We was formed in 1912, starting to make Stilton cheese. And we've continued to make our world famous blue cheese on the same site since the first day we started manufacturing in 1912. And as we stand today, we're the largest manufacturer of Stilton cheese. We've got 34 farms supplying the milk. They're all members. They all own the business. So all of our farmers really care about everything they do and the quality of the milk they give to us. It's their business. And we're, really proud of everything we do. And I'm pleased to be able to share some of my experience and knowledge with you tonight. So, Anna, did you want to say a few things before we launch into the first cheese?
Yeah, definitely. So, I've been studying wine for past probably 7 years now. So I've been a sommelier and then moved on to start my own business doing wine tastings where I'm from. But it was a sommelier job that got me so passionate about it and doing the food pairings and talking to people all about wine. So now I'm not doing that as a full-time career. I keep it up on the side, and I've worked in Manoir in Oxford. I was a sommelier there, and it was a great experience doing a sommelier role and working alongside the fine dining food that they have. So and now I'm here in Lincoln, in Lincolnshire. And sometimes I do wine tastings at the Hilton there with Stuart from Clarkson as well.
So, Anna, what cheese do you think we should start with tonight? We've got 3 great Clawson cheeses. We've got our blue Stilton, our blue Shropshire, and the Rutland Red. Which one do you think we should go for first, Anna?
Yeah, so I think the Rutland Red, just because it's the least bold out of all three of them, it's still quite bold, but not as bold as the other two. So I think it's a good place to start.
So before we start with the Rutland Red, I'll just give you a little bit of background. Stilton cheese has been made, as far as we can ascertain from records, since about 1722. The first recorded record of Stilton cheese was Daniel Defoe, who wrote Treasure Island, and he wrote a tour of these isles around Great Britain in the 1720s, and he talked about a blue cheese from the village of Stilton in 1722. And we do know that the cheese was probably made before that date, but that's the first recorded record we've got of the product being made. And they talk about a soft blue cheese. And when we read the details of Daniel Defoe, it very much describes the product that we know as Stilton cheese today. So it's a soft, creamy cheese with a natural rind and blue veining that radiates from the center of the cheese outwards. And as part of that, the cheese was always made seasonally for Christmas, and the farmers tended to have milk that was surplus to requirement, and they didn't know what to do with the milk, and they developed another product called the Rutland Red, a Leicestershire red cheese. And this was a harder cheese that they could make and store for longer periods of time. And that's why the Rutland Red is manufactured by us, and it has been linked through history with the manufacture of Stilton cheese. It was a way of the farmhouse cheesemakers using their milk on occasions when they didn't need to manufacture Stilton cheese. So as Anna said, we'll start with that famous Rutland Red. It's a nice, bright orange cheese, and the colouring comes from a natural additive from a bean that's extracted from a tree in South America, and that gives the cheese a deep red background. It's very similar to a cheddar in texture. So for people that's joined us from America, if you've not had Rutland Red, it's very similar to a very traditional farmhouse cheddar, a little bit more open and flaky in texture. So when you smell the cheese, it's got a very subtle, sweet background note to the cheese. And then when you put it in your mouth, it's got a firm but creamy background to the cheese. It's got a natural rind, which gives it a stronger flavor towards the coat. And it gives a nice sweet back note as you finish eating the cheese on the top of your palate. So Anna, do you want to just talk us through your selection for this cheese?
Yeah. So I think these hard cheeses like cheddar and the Rutland Red really ask for a nice fruity deep red wine. So it is kind of traditional that you might pair a red wine with cheese. Some people think that red wine doesn't go so well with cheese because the tannins react with the acidity in the cheese. But when it comes to Rutland Red and quite bold flavors and a nice saltiness to it, it's nice to then pair it with a Rioja, which also has fruity notes, but a bit of savory aftertaste as well. So you often find with Rioja, as it ages, it starts to take on a little bit of a leathery or cured meat note, and a little bit of savoriness to it. So it's also got that nice acidity that balances the salt. So salt in the cheese is always a good thing. It's a wine friend, so wine likes salty things. It keeps your mouth watering and then wanting to have another sip of wine. So with the Rioja, it's also got the berry notes to kind of cut through and add some vibrancy to the cheese. And then also balancing those savory notes slightly. So with the Reserva Rioja, it's been aged for a year in oak barrel. And traditionally it would have been aged in American oak barrel. But modern versions are aging them in French oak barrels. So French oak barrels add a little bit more vanilla and less aromatic quality than the American style, which would be a bit more spicy and coconut and even tropical notes that it would add. So it would be a bit more oaky traditional style, but this way, the yolk just enhances the nuttiness in the cheese as well, slightly. So yeah, I think that Rioja is it's a nice warming red, and it's a nice warming cheese as well. So it's one of those combinations that works quite nicely. And I think as well, because the texture is quite similar to Manchego that you might find in Spain, although that might be a little bit more semi soft, so yeah, I think where that's from in Spain, people drink with Rioja, and that's a nice combination. And then if you pair it with a red, it has some texture and smooth fruity tea. So yeah, it complements nicely.
I think just to pick up on Anna, the cheese has got a nice subtle back note in the mouth. So those tannins and that slight bitterness from the wine complements. It's not, you've got a bit of cheese with a bit of wine. So I would agree the two are very complementary. I noticed one of the people who have joined us from the States have asked me a few questions about the cheese. So they've asked, is it cloth bound? So yes, it's a natural cheese. It's pressed in a wheel. So the cheese is formed naturally in the wheel. It's cloth bound. Traditionally, the surface of the cheese would have been served sealed with a lard, but we seal it now with a ghee, a butter, so that the cheese is available to anybody that is following a vegetarian diet. So it's sealed, it forms a natural rind, and that helps develop the flavour. And one of the things that is characteristic of naturally rinded cheese, you'll see the colour is slightly darker, closer to the crust, because you do get a loss of moisture, and you do get an intensification of flavour closer to the crust. And I think somebody else from the States has joined and mentioned to the other person, it is available in Trader Joe's, it is Clawson, it is a seasonal listing, so keep an eye out in Trader Joe's. It is there usually around the Christmas season or your Thanksgiving season, so if it's there, give it a try. It's a very different cheese, and as Anna said, very similar probably to a Manchego, not quite as hard as Manchego. And Rutland Red is made from a cow's milk cheese, so it doesn't have that intensity of flavour that Manchego does from the used milk cheese. No, I don't think we've got any more questions.
No.
So our next cheese that we would like to share with you tonight is the Blue Shropshire. Am I right, Anna?
Yes. Yeah.
So Blue Shropshire is made in a very, very similar fashion to a blue Stilton cheese. It's an open textured, semi-hard cheese, quite soft when it's allowed to mature. So we mature this cheese up to 14, 15 weeks to get a nice, soft, creamy texture. And we've changed our Stilton recipe to make this product so it's softer, milder, and more creamy. And it's less intense, so that we're aware that some people don't like the intensity of a blue Stilton cheese. So that we've tried to make this cheese so it's less intense and more appealing. And we started to make this product in the 1970s, so it hasn't got the history that Stilton has, but we made this so that we can appeal to a wider market audience. Again, it's a natural crusted cheese like Stilton. You can see there's a natural rind. So one thing common between a blue Shropshire and a blue Stilton is that you're not allowed to put any additives into your cheese making process to develop the coat. Some of the cheeses you're probably familiar with, French cheeses like a Brie and a Camembert, they put a bacteria into the milk to form that natural white coat. We don't. So when you purchase the Shropshire or a blue Stilton, you will always see a difference in the coat. The coat is essentially whatever's in our environment at that moment in time, and that changes through the winter, the summer, and the spring, and it's the natural yeasts and molds growing on the surface of the coat. So just take a piece of the cheese. It is quite soft. When the cheese is first pierced, around 4 and 5 weeks to develop the blue mold, the cheese will be slightly dry and crumbly in texture, and the blue mold starts to break the cheese down and give it a softer, creamy texture. And the piece of cheese I've got, and any of you that have bought the cheese from Cheese Geek, as we have today, so that we're all tasting exactly the same cheese. It's got a very, very soft, creamy texture, quite firm with the knife when you cut it, but when you put it in the mouth, it's very soft, it's very creamy, and your tongue, it just melts and coats the back of your mouth. A little bit back note of salt, but it doesn't have that intensity of the blue mold flavour that comes through with traditional Stilton cheese. So Anna, what have you paired this cheese with tonight?
So I've paired it with a really famous sweet wine from the south of Bordeaux. So it's a Sauterne. So Sauterne is a sweet wine which is not fortified, so it's simply naturally sweet. So it's from a process called botrytis, where this fungus, which is a natural fungus and a good one, affects the grapes and pierces the skin, so that then juice evaporates and you get a sweetened grape because of how much the sugars are concentrated. So they almost raisinate on the vine, so that then when they're pressed, it turns into a nice sweet wine with a sweet juice. And the grapes they use for this wine are really aromatic, so Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, and sometimes Muscadel as well. But Semillon mostly, because they have the nice thin skins that are really susceptible to the noble rot. So this makes a really nice sweet wine, and often we think of Stilton and pair it with port, but like you said, because it's a bit of a milder version of Stilton, it's nice to pair it with a fruity sweet wine. It's also got the acidity to cut through the fat and complement the saltiness. But really just kind of complement it in a different way, because you can either complement it by pairing it with something very similar, like bold flavors together, or you can go with something that's completely contrasting, like bitter and salty, and then sweet and vibrant and acidity. So I think this pairing really works, especially because I do have quite a sweet tooth. So if anybody else does, then it's a nice addition to the Stilton, especially if you think of putting your cheese with a chutney or a grape or something like apple on the side. It's something that we do with cheese sometimes to just cut through the fat anyway. So this wine, I think, is a really nice pairing. It's got the aromatic quality to stand up against the bold flavors, but also just really nicely complements it when you have a sip and then another bite of cheese.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Anna. The cheese leaves a very subtle, savoury note in your palate, and then when you take a drink of the wine, that sweetness just clears your palate, cleanses the palate, ready to go. So I think when you've taken a sip of wine, you're ready for the next bite of cheese. But to take the point that Anna just mentioned about balancing the wine with the cheese, that also goes very much with things that you can eat with the cheese, the biscuits that you eat. So don't always traditionally follow a water biscuit or plain biscuit. Think sometimes there are nice, sweet, savoury biscuits. Anybody from the UK would be very familiar with a digestive biscuit, which is a sweet biscuit, and I'm sure you'll have something very similar in the US. And that little bit of sweetness in the biscuit, any savouriness balances perfectly. So also consider how and what you put with the cheese, so that the balance. And there's nothing right, there's nothing wrong. So I think one of the greatest things you can do is experiment for yourself, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it doesn't. And as Anna said, people's palates are slightly different, so you will all perceive the flavour of the cheese and the wine subtly different. But I think the pairing of that slight savoury note in the back of your palate from the Shropshire and then the sweet wine, it just cleanses the palate, and the two work perfectly. And I think you could settle back for a very comfortable evening with a piece of Shropshire and a bottle of that wine, which I might do when we finish this evening.
Me too.
Anna, I chose to have the ginger ale with the blue Shropshire. So are you able to maybe explain some of the differences between the wine and the ginger ale or they're not?
Yeah. So interestingly, as the sauterne ages over time, it will take on these spicy notes of ginger and caramel and butterscotch and all of the dried fruits like apricots and also some nutty notes. So this is quite a young sauterne that I have, and some other people might have a young one, but you can get aged ones that have this ginger note, and I think that's quite interesting to have as well. It would be a lovely complement to the cheese as well, because you've got a bit of spice. So it's not just the sweetness and acidity that cuts through, it's also that spice, which I think the cheese, again, it can handle that kind of flavor. So you've got a sweet sugary drink with a little bit of texture as well in the fizzy bubbles, which helps to cut through that creaminess. And then the spike of ginger just gives it a kick and makes you want more as well, I think. Pairing,
Yeah.
making your mouth water again.
Yeah, it complements really well. I never would have put the two together, to be honest. So yeah, love that.
Yeah, and I think our conversations about balance. So if you've got something very sweet, don't overlay it with another sweet flavour. Look for something that contrasts and complements. But I think then the highlight of our evening is to talk about the traditional blue Stilton. So very, very similar appearance to our blue Shropshire. It's got a nice white curd background. So I'll just hold the Shropshire up. So when you see the two side by side, you can see the difference with that orange colouring from the annatto in the blue Shropshire. The white Stilton is just the pure white from the milk. We don't add anything to the milk other than our cheese starters to produce lactic acid and the blue mold culture to develop the blue veining. It's a process that was been followed since our business was formed in 1912, and as far as I can find through various research, it pretty much follows the early documented record back to around 1937. I'll start again. It follows the records that I can find back to 1730, where somebody very famous and close to this area called Francis Paulet started to standardize the recipe. Up to that point, it was made in farmhouses. About 3,000 farmhouses in this area made Stilton cheese with all their own recipes. She started to supply the coaching inns in a village of Stilton and standardized the recipe by buying from a handful of other farmhouse cheesemakers, with them all making to the same recipe. And pretty much we followed that recipe today. So what you've got is very similar, again, to the Shropshire, a natural rind. The colour's slightly different on this one. It's been matured in a slightly different area. And the coat will vary from golden brown through to something that's slightly white, through to something that has a more dark grain appearance. And the coat appearance doesn't affect the flavour or the texture of the cheese. It just gives you an authentic feel that the cheeses come out of natural cheese rooms. And as I mentioned earlier, it was whatever was in that cheese room at that time that's helped develop the coat. So I'll take a nice big chunk of this. After 48 years manufacturing this, it's my favourite cheese. And again, very, very similar to the blue Shropshire. When you cut it, it's quite firm on the knife, but then when you pop it in your mouth, we're maturing this between 14 and 16 weeks. This cheese should be very soft and creamy in the mouth. So very much like the Shropshire, a very soft, creamy mouthfeel. But unlike the Shropshire, and I mentioned it earlier, it's got a bit more of a robust flavour, and it leaves a stronger, more savoury note and just a little bit of bitterness as a back note, and that is synonymous with Stilton. So if there wasn't that little bit of bitterness with Stilton, it wouldn't be the cheese that we know today. It shouldn't be that bitter that's offensive, but it should just be there. You should be able to notice it on the back of the palate. And then as you cleanse the palate, the bitterness will disappear. So it's a stronger, more robust cheese than our Shropshire. And traditionally, I think most people that eat Stilton will have known that Stilton is paired with port. And that came around with Stilton being sold through the village of Stilton in the 1700s, and some of the big organisations buying it. One of it was Coutts Bank, and Coutts Bank were also big traders of port wine from Portugal. And that's how the Stilton became very synonymous with the Stilton cheese. So traditionally, most people would probably reach straight for the port, Anna, but I think you're challenging us today to try something different from the port.
Yeah. So when I worked at Le Manoir as a sommelier there, the chef Raymond Blanc, he always used to say that red wine shouldn't go with cheese. It shouldn't go with cheese. And sometimes people like red wine with cheese, and it's great, but sometimes they do it out of force of habit because that's what they've always done. So he used to say that it was because the acidity in the cheese really doesn't go well with the tannins in the wine. But tannins, they do go really well with fat. So they cut through the fat, and then it kind of makes the tannins less astringent. But then when you've got a nice acidity in the food as well, it might not work so well. So that's what he always used to say. So then I was used to drinking white wine with cheese for a while. So then something that is really versatile and always pairs well with a lot of dishes is Chardonnay. So Chardonnay from Chile especially is really fruity, and it gets quite a high alcohol. And in Chile, they are quite lucky to have very old vines. So the vines, they go quite deep and get a lot of nutrients, and they get a lot of sunshine hours because it's on the southern hemisphere. So you've got a lot of sunshine. It's the new world. So you do have more fruit forward flavors than in the old world. So a little bit more bold Chardonnays than you would get in France. But France is a different style. Again, you've got Burgundy where they would age them in oak barrels for a long time, and it's a different, more refined style. So this Chardonnay, it's a very versatile wine. So it is a dry wine, but the fruit flavor in the Chardonnay makes it feel like it's got a little bit of sweetness. So in England, we really like our dry wines. So it's why I've mixed it up a bit with the sweet wine for the Shropshire Blue, and then a dry white wine for Blue Stilton. That is our tasting. So yeah, it's a fruit forward Chardonnay. If you've got an oaked version, then it will enhance the nuttiness again in the cheese. And it can also pair better with creamier foods if it's got that slight bit of oaked character. So then you've got vanilla-y, toasty notes in the wine as well. So it's a bit more of it's another complexity as well if you add the oak aging in the wine. So yeah, it's a different pairing. And then I've also paired Yellowtail Jammy Red Roux. It's a little bit of a gimmicky wine, but it does have a bit more sweetness. So it's got a bit of sweet character and bold berry fruit. So it's got a lot of berry bursting aromas and flavors, and then also a bit of vanilla on the end. So Yellowtail is a great brand, actually. It's really underrated because it's got a goal, and that's to sell wine that everybody will enjoy. So they really do that well, and I think everybody can enjoy a glass, no matter if they're a wine connoisseur or if they are just having it on a night with some cheese. So it just keeps it really humble. And if you like a red wine with a cheese and not a fortified strong wine, then it's nice to go with a red that's slightly berry, and then a bit of sweetness to it as well. So that's those pairings.
That's thanks for challenges, Anna, because it's so easy just to reach for the port because that's what we're very familiar with the wine. I've just tried both, and yeah, no, it's interesting, and it's a interesting challenge. The wine seemed to clean my palate,
Yep.
but out of the two, I think the latter one you've just talked about, the red wine, probably would be my personal preference, and I'm sure everybody's palate's different. And I think the interesting thing for us tonight is to say, go out there, enjoy the cheeses, enjoy the wines, have a little experiment, and you know, probably not all of us are ever going to agree what the perfect pairing is, but hopefully we've challenged you to think about the pairings tonight and yeah, try some different wines with the different cheeses. And I certainly love this red wine with the Stilton, and yeah, it's different to port, and some people I guess will stick with port, but why not try the red wine that Anna suggested?
Stilton, king of cheeses.
Yeah, yeah.
You guys have been making it forever. Absolutely forever.
Yeah,
we've got a question there from Lauren also about Huntsman.
Yeah, so we do. Lauren, Huntsman is a Clawson trademark brand. So if you see any products in the US, I know I think you mentioned you're from the US earlier. If you see Huntsman, it will be from Clawson. Just have a look. There are some copies there. Make sure you buy the genuine one. It is our soft Stilton, the Stilton I mentioned a few minutes ago. So we take whole natural cheeses and we cut slices of the cheeses and we layer it with slices of double Gloucester, and then we hand make those back and fold them into a cheese. And the other giveaway is we sell about 95% of all the Huntsman we make to the US. It's a very, very popular cheese. It seems to be exceptionally popular in the US. So it's perfect. You've got a cheese and cheese contrast. So as Anna and myself have been talking about, the cheese and wine contrast, you've got that mild, very creamy double Gloucester with the Stilton with that slight savoury note, and the two do balance and complement each other. So you've got a cheese pairing that complements, and I'm not sure what we'd probably pair that with.
Yeah, cheese pairing.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what Anna would probably pair that one, because the cheese do kind of balance each other out. Anna,
I reckon it would be a beer, definitely a beer.
Yeah, I think it would.
You'd need to pint down the pub with that on a Ploughman's.
Well, we've talked about wine tonight, and I'm sure Anna would agree. There's a lot of people out there that drink beers, and we've done very similar sessions with this with a local brewery in Melton Mowbray.
They're our favourite.
We've come up with some phenomenal beer pairings. So if you're not a wine person out there tonight and you love ales, go and give some traditional ales a try with the cheese. They work equally well. And some dark porters work exceptionally well with blue.
Oh my God. And those guys make a, have you tried their black lager?
Yes.
They make us like a summer porter. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm trying to think of their name. What's their names?
Round Corner Brewery. Yeah. So, and we got a guest, I think, from New Zealand, and the brewer learnt his craft, his trade out in New Zealand before he came back to the UK. So maybe there's a little influence from New Zealand in the beers we're drinking in Melton.
They came and did the beer for us at the Afternoon of our Afternoon of the Year event, and it was superb, absolutely superb. We've got a question, Anna, for you. Could you repeat the name of the red wine yellowtail make lots? Oh,
it's Jammy red brew. Yeah. So it is a little bit of a gimmicky wine, like you said. It's nothing so it's not a connoisseur's wine. It's just a nice wine that pairs with this cheese because it's got the sweetness and the berry fruits. So it's a nice wine and very accessible. Everyone can find this kind of wine. So
yeah, definitely in the supermarkets. I don't think you'd find it at La Manoir.
No.
I think the interesting thing about that red wine is just a very easy drinking wine. It's not robust, and it's not in your face. It's not overcomplex. It's just very fresh and very easy drinking. I think that's why it works so well with the Stilton.
Yeah, it's humble.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's been so lovely to have an insight into Clawson, most definitely. And fantastic for all these international visitors and people to hear your story as well. Was there any questions? Anybody else got any other questions? Do put them in the chat, did you have anything else you wanted to add, guys, to the discussion, or are you happy for us to tell people what's happening tomorrow on Big Cheese
So
Weekend
I
Day
just,
3?
as we've got no other question, I'll just leave with a message. I work in the dairy industry. All cheese is great. Experiment. We're really proud of our cheese. We genuinely believe that Stilton is the best of all blue cheeses. There's some phenomenal good cheeses, blue cheeses from other parts of the world. And I know we've got quite a few guests that have joined us tonight from the US, and I have tasted and seen some really good cheeses in Vermont. So, you know,
my word,
if you
yeah.
can't find Stilton, which I would always encourage you to go and hunt down and try, because we believe it's the best. There are some phenomenally good blue cheeses out there. Give them a try. Experiment. Yes.
Jasper
I
Hill,
wasn't
Bailey
going to
Hazel, they're all
mention
going
it.
to come out now.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention it, but yes, Jasper Hill. I would be brazen, if I'm allowed to say that.
Oh,
Brazen enough to suggest that Jasper Hill are so jealous of our product they've actually tried to copy it. So it's very close to a Stilton, to the point that I actually know the cheesemaker came and spent some time in the UK looking at how we made.
That's fantastic. We were talking about this last night with Stacey Hedges from Tunworth, that cheesemakers are brilliant at sharing knowledge and sharing all the hiccups and the pitfalls with each other from across the world. She's been over in France learning more about how to you know, improve her Tunworth. Not that it could be improved much more, but yes, I love the fact that cheesemakers share their knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah.
We do have one quickly for you. We've got, have you ever tried white port with cheese? I love white port.
I have.
And what was your best cheese with it? Stilton. Go on, tell us, Kim. Stilton.
No, ironically not. I don't know what's happened to my screen. It just jumped for a second. No, we at Clawson, we haven't talked about them tonight. We make quite a lot of white Stilton, which is the young version of the blue cheese. It's ready to eat in about 10 days. It's very salty. It's very similar to a feta. I would say it's almost an English feta. It's fantastic with salads. And I actually had this by chance when we was visiting somebody in Portugal, and we had a white Stilton and walnut salad, and we had chilled white port. It was a hot day. It was lunchtime. And combination of where we was and the cheese and how it was used. So the cheese was crumbled into a lightly dressed salad with walnuts and served with chilled white port, and it was excellent.
That does sound good. We've got quite Lauren's asking a good question here. Do you think there is a lot of variation in the Stiltons from each of the different producers of Stilton?
Okay, so
well, I can answer that objectively if you like, Kim.
Well, let me answer it, and then you can agree to disagree or not. So all of us have to follow. So Stilton is a protected cheese product, so all of us have to follow a standardized recipe. But within the standardized recipe that all of us, all 5 manufacturers, have to follow, we're allowed to make subtle changes to the starters that we put in the cheese. We've got milk coming from different areas of Leicestershire, Nottingham and Derbyshire, and we've got very different environments that we mature the cheese. So be it that we all follow the same recipe, the subtleties of the difference, the milk, the starters and the environment we mature the cheese does develop different flavored cheeses. And I would believe that Clawson's is softer, creamier and milder cheese. Some of our competitors make a cheese that is probably more robust in flavor, but yes, they're all very similar, but they're all different. I'm sure you would agree, Tracy.
Yes, yeah, they are. And do you know, we did many years ago, I did a tasting in a farm shop when I was back working as a sales rep and supporting the farm shops that I supplied. We did one between, sorry, not Clawson, but Crockwell Bishop and Colston Bassett, and it came out 50-50, the people's you know, their favorite. So I think there's a Stilton out there for everyone, shall I say?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the amount of bluing, the amount of needling that goes on for those cheeses, and all of them are different. I know there's probably a different drink for each one, Anna, too. We could probably just do a Stilton through all the Stilton producers and wine pairing class, couldn't we?
Yeah,
That might be fun next year.
And I think we've not mentioned it tonight, but we certainly champion the fact that Stilton, whilst traditionally it's a cheeseboard cheese, it is the most versatile, fantastic ingredient for cooking.
Yeah.
Whether you make a sauce or you top a steak or you make a dip, it's probably the most versatile cheese out there to use as an ingredient. So your limitation is probably your imagination. So,
and we've got some wonderful recipe cards from you that we're putting in the goodie bags that are going out at Chiswick Cheese Market tomorrow, because we've got a takeover of the whole of Chiswick Cheese Market tomorrow. So we've got some of your lovely recipe cards that the lovely Priya sent me. So we've got those ready to give out. I think there's 4 or 5 different recipes, Priya.
Yes. Yeah. I think we had a risotto, a pizza, a pancake, an egg and pancake, and I can't remember the 4th one.
Okay, well, I've got them all ready to go. They're all collated to go into the bags with Peter's Yard crackers and whatever else. So
lovely.
We've got.
I think what's also quite nice with the Stilton is that when you are using it as a cooking ingredient, a little goes a long way. So it'll last you through a few dishes throughout the week as well. And it's a great way to use your Stilton up after Christmas, as well as kind of if you've got any leftover in the fridge and you don't know what to do with it. Great idea to kind of use it as a cooking ingredient in January.
I know we've got a question for Anna, but I would also just add it's very, very healthy because it's so savoury. The one thing, you add Stilton to a lot of dishes, you don't need to add salt. It actually is really good.
No.
It's that savoury note. So in that respect, it becomes quite healthy.
You definitely don't need to add the salt. Whenever I do steak, Stilton on top of a steak, I don't salt the steak. I just have the Stilton to
So I'm intrigued as well. We've got a question, Anna. Which cheese did you match with hot chocolate?
It was the blue Stilton, actually. Yeah. It is something of a personal preference as well. Like I said before, I do have a sweet tooth, but if you ever had Stilton and then chocolate after, and then Stilton again, then it really complements each other. It's again having that saltiness and bitterness, and then the sweetness is again to cut through it. And the fact that it's both dairy, it just the creaminess matches. So you've got the contrast and the complementary in both those things. So when you've got hot chocolate and it's a nice winter evening and you're eating Stilton as well, sat in front of the fire, then it's just the perfect evening. So this is definitely subjective. So some people might say, oh, I don't want a hot drink with my cheese, but it really does work.
It could be a great way to get the children eating Stilton, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you can go a bit bolder with your hot chocolate as well. Like the really rich dark chocolate hot chocolates would be great rather than the more milder sweet versions. But you can also add ginger spice to your hot chocolate or chili because the Stilton would carry these kind of flavors. But just having that backbone of sweet creamy chocolate is a really nice contrast to the cheese.
I think they're winning us over our porter and Stilton, Kim.
Yeah.
They're competing against us now.
Somebody mentioned dates and figs, and I would actually agree. I was in a restaurant and they served the Stilton with some dates and fresh figs with a drizzle of honey. And that was at the end of the meal. It was like a cheese board, but not a cheese board. It was really, really good. You've got the fruit and the cheese and the drizzle of honey.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're going to say thank you so much to Kim, Anna and Priya for presenting tonight all about Clawson cheeses. Fantastic to have those on the board with these amazing wine pairings. and some recipe suggestions. Thank you to everybody for joining us from all around the world. Rachel is going to close us off now and just tell us a little bit about what's happening tomorrow for day 3 of the Big Cheese Weekend.
Final day. We've made it to this far, and we're going out with a bang tomorrow. Starting off at Chiswick Cheese Market. I know a lot of
Tracy, you've.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
I'm back. Sorry.
Tracy.
Sorry. I've
So
been
we-
listening.
We missed that, Rachel. Start again.
Shut up. Yeah, so I was saying we're kicking off at Chiswick Cheese Market tomorrow, which is West London. Obviously, so many of you won't be able to join us there from America. You're not going to be able to get over to here in that time. So we've got a great line of virtual events in the evening, which you will be able to join. But first of all, Chiswick Cheese Market is just going to be amazing tomorrow. We've got so much going on. It's a monthly market that happens every third Sunday of the month. But this time around, they've just everything's happening tomorrow. We've got book signings, we've got cheese making demos, there's in-person masterclasses. What else is going on?
Hot cheese, toasties,
macaroni, mac and cheese. It's just going to be stunning. Live bands. So that's from 9:30 till 3 o'clock tomorrow, West London. If you can't make it there, our evening of virtual events kicks off at 4 p.m. with a beautiful, beautiful movie made by James Grant. He took a visit down to Quicks down in Devon, and it's a stunning movie. Really recommend watching that. Followed by another funny film, really unique. We're very, very honoured to be able to premiere a movie by the Trethern brothers from inside their dairy and their cheese making. And when you see what the skill and craft that they put to make their pitchfork cheddar, it will blow your mind. It's brilliant, really worth a watch. Followed by 6 o'clock, Ask the Experts. So any questions anybody has to ask about cheese, how to store it, how to care for it, what to do with the leftovers from Christmas. Great panel of experts. We've got Ned Palmer, who's written 2 books now.
Yeah, on his third, about to release his third about French cheese.
That's a good one. Ruth Raskin, who we saw yesterday from the Fine Cheese Company, Claire Burt from Burt's Cheese, and Catherine Temple from Mrs. Temple's Cheese. So stellar lineup of experts that are on hand, will be live, ready to answer your questions. 7 o'clock, Liner Dairies with another lovely recording of the ladies doing the nettling of their Cornish yarg. So that's really, really fascinating. Followed by Otto Mead, who's Claire's Mead's son. He's going to give us a live demo of his oozy, gooey, lovely 3 cheese melted toasty. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, you've bought the cheese for it, haven't you?
Cheese and fridge. And then we finalise the weekend.
I will in this time, while the others are going on, I'm going to drive from London back to Norfolk, 3.5 hours, to be in the final one, which is awesome.
It will be awesome. It's 8 o'clock, and we're going to see 6 of our international training partners from their little spots around the world, including New Zealand and Australia.
It's going to be Monday morning for them, you know.
So Wendy and Franco are getting up at 5 a.m. to broadcast live from their spots, the other side of the world, bless them. And they're going to be bringing us their favourite cheeses to put on their boards and tell us a little bit about what's happening in their part of the world on the cheese scene.
Yeah, we're going to Paris as well. Paris, Kanako is in Oxford, but representing Japan. Stephen up in Leeds and Galena in Paris. So a real global
And
food. And
Sven
Sven Erik, sorry, in Norway. So do join us for that one, the finale. If I don't get there, it might be a blank screen. No, I will get there. I will get there, I promise. Yeah, it'll be you. So thank you again, Kim, Priya, and Anna. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Pairings.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this evening. Now you're allowed to go and relax. Saturday.
No, thank you to yourself, Tracy, Rachel, for facilitating this so that we can share our passion with everybody that's joined us tonight.
Well, that's brilliant, and thank you. So over and out. Big Cheese Weekend of day 2 is saying good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
everybody.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.